simplicity is something that's underappreciated when starting a business, that it doesn't need to be complicated. I'm Sean Sanders. I'm the CEO and founder of Revix. Revix was founded in early 2018, and we received investment backing from a JSE listed company, a specialty investment group, and a NASDAQ listed payments firm. We've raised about $1.8 million to date. I say about because we have raised in a few different currencies, and that's probably the first thing we can get into is when you're raising capital in different currencies, in different countries, there's challenges around that. I come from an investment banking background. I worked at a hedge fund for a short while. I worked at a specialty investment group, the same one that ended up investing in us. I worked at a family office based in the UK, and I worked at a venture capital firm. And while I was at the venture capital firm, I realized that I was sitting on the wrong side of the table. I wanted to meet all these all these really passionate entrepreneurs, and I just knew that I needed to be on the other side, and that sort of, led me to jump and, do my own thing.
And now you are on the other side of the table. All that experience must have helped. It must have given you some guidance as to what investors are looking for and how to present yourself and so on.
It did. It did, but I don't think anything can really prepare you for the journey that you get dealt, because it is your own unique your unique deck that you get given, and you have to, play with those cards that are given to you. And, I've got a lot of experience raising capital. I've dealt with, a lot of raises from the VC perspective, so I know what the VCs are looking for. And yeah, sure, that helps me a lot. But, there's other weaknesses, and you have to be able to identify those weaknesses. So, from my perspective, we are a company that is very heavily regulatory compliant, or we have to be regulatory compliant. I don't have a regulatory background, so you either learn really quick or you have to use experts in those fields. So sort of being able to make sure you understand where your blind spots are and deal with those accordingly is quite useful.
And I guess one of the other big differences must be the emotional side. Obviously, when you're working on behalf of a VC, it's very numbers and facts based. Whereas when you're doing it for your own company, your baby, there's suddenly all the emotions that go with it. So did you find that a challenge when you were making the transition?
Without a doubt. I mean, it depends, I think, on your personality type. I'm an obsessive individual. So when I start with something, I climb all the way in and everything else sort of takes a back seat, which is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because you go full out at something. It's also a curse because you lose friendships, you lose relationships. I've lost 2 relationships since starting Revix. That's not meant to be a sub story. It's kind of just like there's sacrifices, and there's tangible sacrifices when starting a business. So, there's ups and downs. It is a roller coaster. And I think, it's a really fun roller coaster, don't get me wrong. But at times it is really, really difficult. And at times it's absolutely euphoric. So, you've got to be up for that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the challenge around dealing in different currencies and explaining that to people. So what are the key challenges with that, and how do you manage it?
Sure. So we've got 2 companies. We've got Revix UK and Revix South Africa. Now, both companies are separately held. So they've got the same shareholders, but there isn't one company owning the other. And what this meant is essentially when we raised capital, we had to raise in 2 different currencies. There's currency fluctuations that take place over time. There's different laws, there's different regulations. All of that adds complexity. And, it was a great idea at the time to say, oh, this is why we're going to go do it. And there's a host of reasons why we did this. But when I look back, a simple structure is generally the easiest and the best. It's easy to communicate to investors later on. It leads to less paperwork as well. You don't have to deal with company secretaries and, having to, sort of explain yourself for every funding round or every investor you speak to. So I think simplicity is something that's underappreciated when starting a business, that it doesn't need to be complicated. And sometimes, maybe foregoing a really fancy corporate structure that has some potential benefit at some future date, or something that's really simple, maybe isn't the right strategy to pursue.
Yeah, and with that hindsight then, what would you have done differently to avoid those complications?
One business based in the UK, that is it. One market to focus on, not spreading your attention across different territories, really understanding that there is nuances across markets. There's nuances across consumers. A British consumer is very different to a South African consumer, which is very different to an Australian consumer. Just, I think, having the humility to realize that is, the reality. And you're not going to be able to outdo what all these other entrepreneurs and startup founders or the rest of before have sort of confronted. I guess that's my big advice on that front.
Perfect. And let's take a step back for a second then. So talk to me before you got into actually raising the funding for this. What gave you the idea to start this business? Why was there the need? And then I guess where was that line where you thought actually there really is something here and we can raise capital and have a real go at this?
Sure. So coming from an investment banking background, I mean, I was in portfolio management for a while, working for a family office. We were managing wealth for a fairly wealthy individual in the UK. And you sit in this position where you're going, okay, well, I want to invest in an asset class, and I'm not going to take a single bet on a single stock or a single property or a single sort of commodity. You want to diversify across, not even just across asset classes, but intra-asset class. So you want to diversify in the commodity asset class, you want to diversify in the property asset class, etc. And then when you arrive at crypto, which back in 2015 was definitely not deemed to be an asset class, but it was an emerging asset class. And when you arrived at that asset class, there was just nothing that allowed you to diversify really easily. So when you were trying to enter that space as an investor, that you can take a bet on Bitcoin, you can take a bet on Ethereum, but those are bets. They're not necessarily smart, diversified investments. So that's really where the idea was born, was to say, well, let's take a diversified approach to this cryptocurrency asset class, and let's offer what we launched with, which was bundles. So you can buy into our top 10 bundle, which provides equally weighted exposure to the top 10 cryptocurrencies and operates very similar to an ETF. The beauty is that you actually own the underlying cryptocurrencies with us. So that was our initial product that we launched with, which was this top 10 bundle. And then since then, we've launched other bundles, we've launched other cryptocurrencies on our platform, and now we're branching out into other themed-based investments. So, that was sort of our launch pad, because crypto is exciting. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the crypto sphere. But longer term, I mean, I really do see Revix as being a wealth management partner for a lot of people. And you're not going to do that by just focusing on the crypto space.
Absolutely. And obviously you went from that idea and realization, you took the business through the initial funding. What does life look like the other side of funding? What were particularly the first couple of months, say, what had to be put in line once that was done?
I think you slowly start growing your headcount over time. So you start out with, you're spending X amount, right? And it's, to you a lot of money at that point in time, but you're paying like 2 people or 3 people salaries. There's server costs, there's all the rest that goes with that. Then you scale up to 5 people, and then there's that monthly payroll cost. Then you scale up to 10 people, and then there's that monthly payroll cost. Then you're dealing with outsourced developers. And I mean, this obviously just continues on and on and on. So with more money comes more problems. You're dealing with more people. You've obviously got more things that you need to focus on. You're spending more on marketing. Therefore, the stakes are higher. So there's a lot more to juggle, I guess, when you get funding. There's also a lot of investor relations, which I think people don't appreciate. It's one thing to be able to get an investor, and I think this is really golden advice, but it's one thing to get an investor. It's a different thing to keep an investor. I mean, by keep, I mean having an investor that follows on in the next round. When you get to your Series A or Series B, you need everyone that's currently on your cap table to be following on. That's the best indicator by far. When you don't have somebody that's going to follow on in the future round, and the other investors start questioning that, that's enough to destroy an entire deal. So that is something that's quite important as well.
Yeah, so that stakeholder management piece is key. Yeah, I suppose. And your role then as the founder, how's that evolved over the period of time?
You go from doing everything to sort of finding other people that can do things better than you can. And it's quite phenomenal. It's absolutely remarkable, actually, how you find people that can do things better than you, and you can, sort of bring them in to specialize. And all of a sudden, wow, this part of the business is just so much better. So it doesn't matter if you're focusing on the accounting side of the business, or if you're focusing on the technical elements. For us, we've got a big financial component, bringing in experts in that area. All of that really starts sort of contributing to overall having a better company, and you then can step into a management role. So for me, it's been I've gone from being very ops orientated to very operational to being a lot more managerial and a lot more of a leader to the business, which I think is a natural progression for most founders.
Yeah, a natural progression. I suppose you've done it at a fairly difficult time. So the bulk of the company's lifespan, I suppose, has been during COVID and various lockdowns and this, that, and the other. So how has the business handled that, both as a business as a whole, but also team management wise?
So I'll start from the team management perspective. So we were fortunate that we are a digital only business. So going online was something that we were sort of prepped for. I mean, we've got a policy where employees can work from home for 2 or 3 days a week. So, I mean, going fully remote wasn't a difficult sort of process for us, which is great. From an operational perspective and from a growth perspective, I mean, the lockdown's been phenomenal for us. We grew about 500% this last quarter. We're about to have our best month and our best trading month in our history. Dare I say this, and it's still a little early because it's the 27th and not the 31st, but we may even break even this month, which is not something that will be sustainable, but just because of sort of how the crypto markets performed over the last while, we've seen just a phenomenal number of deposits, and the size of the deposits have been a lot larger than normal as well. So, I mean, the start of 2021 has been a great start to the year. But going through lockdown, I mean, it was a good period for us. All around, marketing was, unaffected. Actually, the amount that we had to pay to market in various areas came down. So that was a big benefit for us. And I think it came down for us in particular, just looking at this and saying, okay, where's the opportunity? I mean, people were moving into gold. That's one of the products we offer. People were moving into crypto. That's obviously another set of products that we offer. So, and more people had time, which is, I guess, at the end of the day, you need to grab their attention. They've got more time. You can get people on your platform.
So if anything, it was good timing by the sounds of it. So what are some of the obstacles then that you foresee for this year for the business?
Scaling. We've really been tested on the scaling side of things. So, it sounds phenomenal when you go and you click the spreadsheet or the cell in the Excel document and you pull it to the right and it goes and creates this big graph that looks phenomenal. But when you go from having 100 customers to 500 customers to 1,000 customers to 5,000 registered customers, I mean, you don't scale in a linear fashion. Like 1 month, you land up growing 2x the last month, which is then 5x the month before that. And that sort of growth becomes difficult to handle from a customer support standpoint. I mean, we're fortunate that our systems are in a position that they can handle that, but we've had to rewrite a lot of systems that we previously had. We've had to look at our processes as well. So we have to allocate customer deposits. We have to, be able to recon bank statements. We have to, make sure that we've got enough liquidity on various crypto exchanges and all the rest. And that's difficult to do at scale. I mean, when you start dealing with, millions from hundreds of thousands, that becomes quite interesting as well. Not millions of customers, but millions of pounds. Again, your security standards have to improve. And it's just the scaling element, which you're going, wow, I did not think that this was going to be such a challenge, and something that you sort of have to apply from a system perspective rather than from a more kind of, okay, just apply more people and, let's hire more people to this.
Yeah, in addition to the systems, and I suppose the alternative to hiring more people is training up your current staff so they can handle it. So how have you found that? Because obviously when a company's scaling, you hire someone for a set role in the hope and vision that they can then handle the scale as well. Have you seen that happen where people have had to really make that transition and take the next step?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the way my team have managed to find solutions to these problems, I mean, it's just been remarkable. They've been put in a position where they have to. I mean, you can't go and get a customer support agent tomorrow, right? You've got to train somebody up. With what we do, it's very niche, very specialized. It takes months to do so. So you go and you have to take the steps to naturally think about where's Revix going to be in 6 months or 12 months time, and then you go and start your hiring process for that. But in terms of being able to immediately manage the systems, it's like, how do you do that immediately? So, I mean, upskilling on Airtable, so upskilling on a lot on your SaaS tools, looking at how quickly you could automate certain things. And one of the biggest benefits to Revix was really taking a look at, okay, what are the really high impact small wins that we could have? And what I mean by that is what takes or what would require a small amount of effort and have a really big impact. And when you sort of just take a step back and you look at that and you go, okay, what sort of areas of this business can we apply that methodology to? You actually can start finding really creative solutions. And I think it is, you hear from a lot of startup founders the idea of resource scarcity and then being able to find creative solutions being in that situation. And it's true. You kind of in that position and you actually do come up with some creative ideas.
Amazing. And just to finish off, where can people listen and find out more about both yourself and Revix?
Sure. So you can head over to www.revix.com. That's Revix. And you can read up more about what we do there. I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but we allow you to buy and sell a bundle of digital currencies. So our approach, in my opinion, and in my team's opinion, is a more sensible and responsible way to invest in a really volatile and high-risk asset class. In the near future, we're going to be branching out and offering themed-based investments. And this is now not in the crypto space. If you're wanting to invest in, say, electric vehicles, ride-hailing, AI, biotech, robotics, legal cannabis, esports, all these different themes and sectors that are emerging, and you just don't know how to get exposure to these areas, that's sort of where you're going to come to Revix, and we're going to be able to assist you. I mean, we make investing really easy. That's our game, and our mission really is that we want to make each and every person that comes to our platform their own wealth manager.